In September 2024, a death sentence will be carried out in the U.S. state of Missouri. It is the first time in many years that a criminal has been executed by lethal injection. Marcellus Williams, a convicted murderer, will die at the age of 55. The reports on the execution of the sentence are going around the world, not only because the death penalty is viewed critically, especially in Western countries, but also because there were serious doubts as to whether Marcellus Williams was rightly convicted. But why was the man on death row at all? And what led to the fact that his sentence was ultimately carried out, despite justified doubts? It is 1998. Felicia Gayle is 42 years old and married to Dr. Daniel Pekus, a radiologist. The two have dated since their teenage years and married in 1980. Felicia herself worked as a journalist for a newspaper called Post-Dispatch in the 80s. She had previously graduated from the University of Illinois with a bachelor's degree. She is very popular in the office, not only because she does an excellent job as a journalist, but also because she always has an open ear for her colleagues and takes care of everyone. In 1992, Felicia quit her job at the newspaper and started doing volunteer work instead. Felicia is a fervent feminist. She also cares deeply about working with children and protecting the environment. She grew up with 7 siblings in a large family. Her social conscience was probably instilled in her from an early age. She lives with Daniel in a house on Kingsbury Boulevard. The apartment building is located in an area called Amos Place. Amos Place has a special feature. There is no car traffic here. The small residential area is closed to motorists. Only pedestrians are allowed. It is an upscale neighborhood where many academics live. And it is precisely there that Felicia is murdered on August 11th, 1998. The crime scene is her own house. When the police arrive, the 42-year-old can no longer be helped. Shortly after the murder, the police remain tight-lipped about the details of the crime. It is revealed that Felicia's husband Daniel was at home when the police arrived. Investigators would not comment on whether he was the one who called the police. They also declined to comment on whether anything was stolen from the Pekus house. However, it was quickly announced that Daniel was not a suspect. The police can rule him out as his wife's murderer just one day after the body is found. Felicia was stabbed multiple times with a knife. The suspected murder weapon is found in the house near her body. The first media reports speak of 10 stab wounds, later of up to 43 wounds. 7 of the wounds are said to have been fatal for Felicia. The murder took place in broad daylight. At first, the investigation is slow. Not only can the police find no suspect, but the investigators can't even make sense of the motive. No one seems to have any reason to murder the warm, helpful Felicia. Felicia had many friends, but no enemies. When she was murdered, there were more than 30 handwritten greeting cards in her house that Felicia had meant to send to friends. She sent hundreds of such cards each year for all kinds of occasions, to just about everyone she knew. More than 700 guests attend Felicia's funeral. 1 month before her murder, a similar crime occurred in a neighboring area. On July 20th, 1998, a woman in St. Louis was the victim of a robbery and murder. So the police are investigating the possibility of a serial killer on the loose in the city. In the hunt for Felicia's killer, the police are becoming increasingly desperate. So is her husband Daniel. He offers a reward of $10,000 for any information that leads to the arrest of his wife's killer. In 1999, almost a year after Felicia Gayle's murder, a lead finally emerges. A prison inmate named Henry Cole claims to know who is responsible for the murder of the former journalist. Namely, his former fellow inmate Marcellus Williams. Marcellus and the informant shared a prison cell from April to June 1999. Marcellus Williams was in prison at the time for a different crime. He was convicted of robbing a donut shop and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Informant Henry Cole now claims that Marcellus told him that he had murdered Felicia Gayle. This is the first time that Marcellus Williams' name has appeared in the investigation files. Without the testimony of the prison inmate, the police would probably never have come up with him. Henry Cole stated that the two of them were watching TV together, and a report about the murder of Felicia Gayle was shown. On this occasion, Marcellus told Henry that he was the murderer of the woman they were looking for. In his statements to the police, Henry is also said to have mentioned things that the police had not previously disclosed to the public. So it was knowledge of the perpetrator that he said Marcellus Williams had given him. The police also questioned Marcellus's ex-girlfriend Laura Asaro. The police apparently got in touch with her through Henry Cole himself. She confirmed the prison informant's statement to the investigators. His ex-girlfriend now also claims that Marcellus committed the murder. During a search of Marcellus Williams' grandfather's car, police find a calculator and a ruler from the newspaper where Felicia worked. Both of these items are said to have been in her possession and missing after the murder. Marcellus Williams is said to have borrowed his grandfather's car on August 11, 1998, according to Laura Asaro. That was the day Felicia Gayle was murdered. So the police have what they have been looking for in vain for a year: the perfect suspect. When it comes to the trial of Marcellus Williams, he has to face a jury. Almost all of the jurors who vote on Marcellus's fate are white, 11 out of 12 members. These jurors were selected in advance from a pool of candidates. And in this field of candidates, there were a total of 6 African-American people. So there would have been a chance to put together a balanced jury. However, 5 of the 6 black jury candidates were rejected. And so it ultimately came to an unequal composition of 11 white and 1 black jury member. In this case, this is considered particularly critical. Because the defendant is black, the victim, Felicia Gayle, is white. It is feared that large sections of the jury may have been biased by prejudice and structural racism. However, the composition of the jury is not the only critical point. The trial against Marcellus is a so-called circumstantial case. This means that there is no forensic evidence against the defendant, such as DNA evidence. Instead, the indictment is based on witness statements and logical combinations of individual pieces of the puzzle. In court, both the jailhouse informant who originally tipped off police to Marcellus and his ex-girlfriend repeat their testimony against him. Both tell the jury that Marcellus Williams killed Felicia Gayle. Such testimony is, of course, important evidence. In this case, however, they are also the main reason why he was charged and convicted in the first place. And there is something else. Marcellus Williams has a mental disability, according to some sources. This disability is said not to have been mentioned even once during the entire trial. The jury knows nothing about it, nor do they know about the physical abuse Marcellus has experienced in his past, or of his childhood in severe poverty. Even if they are convinced of Marcellus's guilt, they cannot take his impairments into account when assessing his sentence. Of course, if Marcellus Williams really is a murderer, neither his impairments nor his traumas are an excuse for his crime. However, it is common practice in capital offenses to take the mental state of the defendant into account when pronouncing sentence. And in the case of Marcellus Williams, it is not just a long-term or life sentence, but the death penalty. Nevertheless, these points are not raised during the trial. In the end, Marcellus Williams was found guilty of the murder of Felicia Gayle. The jury voted to sentence Marcellus Williams to death. After the sentencing, there is a post-conviction procedure. Marcellus's lawyers question the credibility of the 2 witnesses. One of the witnesses is a former prison inmate, Henry Cole, a person who might hope to gain an advantage by helping to solve a crime. In the U.S., it is not uncommon for prisoners to receive benefits in exchange for testifying against other criminals. However, it must be noted that Henry was already free at the time of his testimony against Marcellus. This circumstance does not apply to him. The reward of $10,000 remains as an incentive for incriminating Marcellus. The second main witness is Marcellus's ex-partner Laura Asaro. Both have confirmed their statements in court again. Unfortunately, there are no reliable reports as to whether the two have received the promised financial reward. The court is also upholding its verdict on appeal. Marcellus Williams remains the legally convicted murderer of Felicia Gayle, and the death penalty against him remains in place. The court considers it proven that the following occurred on the day of the murder. On August 11th, Marcellus Williams was driving his grandfather's car. He parked the car at a bus stop and took a bus to University City. There, he wanted to break into a house and was looking for a suitable property. He chose the house of Felicia Gayle and her husband Daniel. He knocks on the door to make sure that no one is home. When the door is not opened, he enters through a window on the ground floor. Felicia was said to have been in the shower at the time. Therefore, she did not hear Marcellus knocking. When Marcellus heard the running water from the bathroom inside the house, he grabbed a knife from the kitchen. Felicia came out of the shower and then caught him breaking in on the first floor. Marcellus then stabbed Felicia, killing her. After that, Marcellus went into the bathroom and cleaned the blood off his clothes. He took Felicia's handbag and her husband's laptop. He leaves through the front door and then takes a bus to leave University City. Later that day, he meets with his ex-girlfriend Laura Asaro, who also incriminates him in court. Laura states that she noticed that Marcellus had scratches on his arms and neck, as well as bloodstains on his shirt. Later that day, Marcellus changed his clothes and threw the bloody clothes down a storm drain. Laura says that she saw a laptop lying around in Marcellus's car that day. It could be the laptop Marcellus stole from Felicia Gayle's house. He allegedly sold it a day or two later to a man named Glenn Roberts. Police locate Glenn Roberts and the laptop. The device is indeed identified as the computer stolen from Felicia Gayle's house. Laura says that on August 12th, she wanted to get something from Marcellus's trunk. She says he tried to stop her. Laura says that there was a handbag in the trunk, and in it, Felicia Gayle's ID and a black purse. Laura says she asked Marcellus how he got the items. He then admitted that the purse belonged to a woman he had murdered. He is said to have then explained to Laura in detail how he committed the murder. He then threatened Laura that he would kill her children and her mother if she told anyone about it. That is the version of the crime that the court considers to be proven. The course of events is largely based on the statements of Henry Cole and Laura Asaro. They are the ones who put Marcellus Williams on death row. Four federal judges review Marcellus's conviction. Two of them conclude that the defendant was not sufficiently well defended. This put him at a significant disadvantage at the trial. Nevertheless, the judgment against him stands. Marcellus Williams spends more than 2 decades in prison. In the next 23 years in prison, Marcellus devotes himself primarily to poetry and religion. He writes poems and studies Islam. He serves as an imam for the Muslim inmates of the prison. Marcellus Williams is considered an exemplary inmate and is integrated into the prison community. And not only that, he fights against his conviction. He maintains that he did not commit the murder of Felicia Gayle. In 2016, the alleged murder weapon in the case of Felicia Gayle is examined again by forensic scientists. The knife was found in Felicia's house, not far from her body. Traces of DNA were found on the handle of the knife. The testing institute in charge of the case determined that, based on the DNA profile obtained, it could not be ruled out beyond reasonable doubt that Marcellus was the perpetrator. Conversely, however, this also means that his guilt cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubt on the basis of the DNA evidence. Marcellus's lawyers then hire an expert. He comes to the conclusion that the DNA profiles of Marcellus and the residues on the knife cannot match. This would be another important point that would speak against Marcellus's guilt. Nevertheless, the verdict against Marcellus Williams is confirmed again in 2017. The execution is scheduled for August 22, 2017. Marcellus is even on his way to execution and has already had his so-called last meal when the execution is suddenly and spontaneously canceled. The then governor has decided at the last second to convene a committee of inquiry. This committee is supposed to re-examine the conviction of Marcellus Williams and check its legality. The problem is that the work of the committee of inquiry takes years, and in June 2023, there is a new governor named Mike Parson. He decides to dissolve the committee of inquiry, and without presenting a report or recommendation from the committee. Effectively, it is as if the committee never existed. Immediately after the dissolution, the Missouri Attorney General requests a new execution date for Marcellus. This date is later set by the court for September 24, 2024. He is scheduled to be executed on that day. At this point, the Innocence Project has been working on the Marcellus Williams case for some time. The Innocence Project of Florida is a non-profit organization dedicated to helping prisoners who have been wrongfully convicted. For example, by providing lawyers or funding DNA testing. The organization also believes that Marcellus Williams was wrongfully convicted. The Innocence Project describes Henry Cole and Laura Asaro, the two main witnesses, as follows. Two unreliable witnesses motivated by promises of leniency in their own pending criminal cases and reward money. Both individuals were known to fabricate. Neither provided information that was not already in media reports of the case or known to police. Their statements contradicted their own earlier statements, the statements of the other individuals, and the evidence at the scene. And none of the information they provided could be independently verified. The Innocence Project notes that the only item that would definitively link Marcellus to the crimes against Felicia Gayle is the stolen laptop. A few days after Felicia's murder, it was sold to a man named Glenn Roberts. According to the Innocence Project, however, an important piece of information was not properly formulated in court. Marcellus Williams did not sell the laptop from the murdered woman's house to Glenn, but Marcellus's ex-girlfriend Laura Asaro. However, for the sake of objectivity, it must be said that the Innocence Project is the only source that presents this fact in this way. The work of the Innocence Project has met with a great deal of support. The case has received increased media attention, and more people doubt that Marcellus Williams is really the murderer of Felicia Gayle. Numerous critical reports and articles have been published, along with petitions. Even Felicia Gayle's family has spoken out against the death penalty. Marcellus Williams has maintained throughout his imprisonment that he did not murder Felicia Gayle. In August 2024, Marcellus Williams and the Innocence Project are trying a detour via a deal with the court, a so-called Alford plea. In doing so, the defendant does not admit to the alleged offense, but acknowledges that the prosecution has sufficient evidence to convict him. In this case, Marcellus does not admit to the murder of Felicia, but confirms that he understands why the court considers him to be the murderer. With this Alford plea, he hopes that his death sentence will be commuted to life imprisonment. Instead, the outcome is different and the verdict is confirmed once again. The prosecution returns to the contradictory DNA results from the murder weapon. In a new report, the authorities state that the weapon was contaminated by the investigators in 2024. This renders the argument of the inconclusive DNA inconclusive. The execution of the death sentence is challenged all the way to the highest court. In September 2024, the case even ended up in the Supreme Court, shortly before the scheduled execution date. But even the highest U.S. court did not suspend the sentence, but confirmed the date. The sentence against Marcellus was carried out on September 24, 2024. At 6 p.m., Marcellus Williams was executed. Before that, he had received a last meal of chicken wings and tater tots. His last words were as follows: "All praise is due to Allah in every situation." The execution of Marcellus Williams has caused quite a stir. The verdict is currently being reported in all kinds of international media. I hope I've given you a comprehensive and objective view of the case here. What are your thoughts on the murder of Felicia Gayle? Are you one of those people who believe that an innocent man was executed? Or do you think that Marcellus Williams was indeed the perpetrator? And even if he was the perpetrator, should the death penalty really still be imposed in this day and age? Feel free to leave a comment. That's how you support me too. because every interaction, whether like comment or subscription, increases the likelihood that the video will be suggested to people who have not yet subscribed to Insolito. Otherwise, there is not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, noon, or evening, or whenever you see the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then.